right now on Living Music, the Birds of Paradise Festival, featuring Dominique Vleeshouwers and Deantoni Parks. And now, here's your host, from her rumpus room in Hollywood, Nadia Sirota!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living Music Birds of Paradise Edition, a special set of shows that explore the creative process inspired by a very special set of concerts in Utrecht. I'm your host, Nadia Sirota, and today's episode is all about A New Dawn for New Tomorrows, which is the final performance of the Birds of Paradise Festival, which will take place on March 13th at 8:30 p.m. Our first guest is a percussionist, first and foremost a percussionist, also a maker and a creative director. He's the winner of the 2020 Dutch Music Prize and really one of the driving forces behind A New Dawn for New Tomorrows. Please help me welcome Dominique Vleeshouwers.
Hello.
Hi, so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Okay, so this is kind of a big project that involves a ton of people. There are multiple composers and dancers and stage concepts and all sorts of cool stuff. But before we dive into this project in particular, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the collaboration you did with the dancer Rado that kind of led to this entire project being invented.
Yeah, in 2020 we got a question from the Dutch Dance Days to do a virtual residency. And then I met Rado for that project, and we were talking like what would we like to do, where are our common grounds. And we soon figured out that we both were in a situation where we were in an environment, in a classical environment basically, but people would say, no, that's not like you should be like this is your box and you should stay in there. Being a classical percussionist and people saying, yeah, you should just like doing this solo stuff or stuff with electronics is not really a thing, it is not being taken seriously sometimes. And Rado, he was a breakdancer and he won a very classical dance prize, and I won a very classical music prize. So we both were in a kind of scene where we were kind of standing out and where people would put us in a box. So that's why we made the performance Blurred Lines.
That's cool, and we'll see a little bit of that in just a moment. But before we get to that, I guess I kind of want to know a little bit more about how you identify as an artist. I know you're a percussionist, but it seems to me like you are somebody who kind of not only likes to organize things, but writes music a bit or improvises a bit. Or how do you think of yourself?
I mostly start with a theme or a topic which I find interesting, or which is a daily topic that I see, or something that sparks me. And then I start to ask myself, like, how can I work with this topic, or how can I bring it to an audience, and how can I bring it on a stage? In the end, what I do is mostly a stage performance. Not always even, it's also other things. And then, of course, my language is music and percussion is a super nice bridge to go between cultures or between music styles or between different disciplines. It's easy to work with dancers or with painters or filmmakers. It's a very versatile language, actually. But because I start from that topic, I sometimes think, oh, maybe actually here the dance is the most important narrator, or here we need a visual artist to explain this part of the story.
That's lovely. So I guess before we get too deep in this conversation, let's let everyone see what we're talking about. Here is an excerpt from Blurred Lines, and we'll see Dominique along with the dancer Rado. Okay, this is such a beautiful performance. And what strikes me about this a little bit is that you are being very physical. There's a physicality to playing, of course, but in some cases, I would say that what you're doing is actually it's very related to dance, if not dancing. Was it a struggle for you, or were you intimidated at all by having to sort of move on stage in this project?
Yeah, it was a kind of a question for me and a challenge also for me to see how, if I would use my own body like a dancer. I'm not a dancer, but I can move, and everyone can move. And how does that influence the music you play on that moment? So the part where we sit with the back to each other, and if Redo gives me a bit of pressure, that influences the way I play. And if I then give a release, that also influences the notes I play. But the other way around, the notes that I play also influence his music again. So it's a kind of like you would sit with the two backs to each other and start talking to each other, but actually one is talking to the body, and you're also talking to the sounds. And yeah, it was a very intimate project actually.
So how did that collaboration blossom into this performance that we're going to see as part of the Birds of Paradise Festival?
Yeah, so we really liked the collaboration with each other, and then we thought it would be very cool to just bring this further and see how dance and music can also relate to visuals. And what if we would have other composers writing new music for us, and could we bring in other dancers who also show maybe a contemporary side of dance? And what if a visual would inspire us to project something on the floor, and based on that something happens? So we started to also look for a topic basically, and that's why it's called a new dawn for new tomorrows, like what the day can bring. Like it's you're heavily influenced by what the weather is like, for example, or if it's a sunny day you become happy. But if there's, for example, bad news, like now a war going on, my whole days I'm super occupied with that topic, and it's maybe harder to focus. So how do these external influences influence our life, and how do we deal with that, and what perspectives do you have on that? That's actually what this project is about.
That's wonderful. How did you come up with all of these collaborators? So if the sort of initial unit was you and Redo, there's now many different composers involved, many different dancers involved. There are visual artists involved. So how did this whole thing come together? How did you find these collaborators?
Yeah, so it started indeed with the topic and the whole story, and then I found Frank. We worked together on making a short list of composers, basically.
So Frank is one of the people who's organizing the whole Birds of Paradise Festival, right? So he was
exactly, and he's a creative producer and a really brilliant creative mind also, and he really knows this composer has this very interesting aspect. So I said, I can imagine this, and this. And he said, I can imagine also this person and this person. Then we started to kind of ping pong with each other. And from there we found Deantoni and Hanna and Kaytlin and also Binkbeats as musicians, and then as dancers, two other break dancers and a contemporary dancer, Camila Bundal. Yeah.
That's such a lovely thing. I can't wait to see how this all comes together as a performance. And we have another one of your collaborators on the show today, and I'm very, very excited to introduce him and see how this collaboration has evolved. So our second guest tonight is a true Renaissance man. He's a drummer, he's a composer, a songwriter, a filmmaker, and an actor, among a million other things, seemingly. And he is another one of the headlining collaborators for A New Dawn for New Tomorrows. Please welcome Deantoni Parks. Hello.
Hi, Nadia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Where are you joining us from?
Signing in from the Midwest. I've been here for the time of COVID, I guess you could say. Loving it.
I like that we have basically the most wide breadth of time zones possible represented on this show between Hollywood and Europe and the Midwest. That's really, really lovely. So before we get into your role in this specific project, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your creative life. It seems like you have done so many things, but what's the sort of headline to you? Do you consider yourself a drummer first or a composer first?
Right. So much of what we think about ourselves determines the reality of it. So we have to all be careful with that. So I've called myself many things over the years, as you can tell from my Wikipedia page. But I've kind of created a term that, or not created, but taken on a moniker that really helps me. So now I just think of myself as a creative technologist. Since I am a human, that sets a lot of tone, right? So it makes it, and we look at really what I'm doing closer, you know what I mean? So being into music for so long has really helped shape this position.
I love that term, creative technologist, and I feel like actually that puts our video introduction of you in a really beautiful light. It's such I'm so taken by this video we're about to see for Bandolero. Is there anything else we should know going in aside from just being open to listening to you and watching you perform?
Yes, this is an unreleased work, which I like sharing unreleased things because I'm ready to release them. But more importantly, this is kind of showing the concept is that the records I've been releasing have also been filmed. So there is no difference between the process within the studio or on stage performing in front of thousands of people. It's the same method at hand. And so that's kind of the point. And everything that you hear is being processed with my body rather than leaving it up to additional help from sequencing or additional overdubs. So that's the kind of point of this. And this is what I call techno self.
Beautiful. So here is Deantoni Parks. This is Techno Self. Here is Bandolero. I love it. I loved that so much. You're such a gifted performer and communicator. And also I just think the music is absolutely tasty. So thank you so much for sharing this unreleased thing.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's grab Dominique back and talk a little bit about A New Dawn for a New Tomorrow. Hey, everyone. So did Frank introduce you guys, or how did you come to start your collaboration, Dominique?
Yeah, actually Frank was talking with Judd Greenstein, and then Deantoni's name came up, and his stuff was really cool. So then I think I sent Deantoni an email myself, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
That's how, it was very casual in a way.
And Deantoni, how much music have you written for other people to perform versus music that you perform yourself?
It's happened over the years. It's obviously me performing my own material outweighs me writing for other people at this point. But I've written a lot, I guess you could say, behind the scenes for many years. And, through a lot of getting through fear and things like that, have just recently been kind of coming out as, hey, I actually write music, kind of thing. Because, as a percussionist primarily and performing, that was my main machine, I guess, to kind of get me more adept and more comfortable in the worlds of composition and improvisation and things like that.
And Dominique, has this project mostly come together, using technology? Have you guys ever all been in the same room together, or have you been sort of collaborating via email and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I almost haven't met, well, I met some people, but not everyone. Especially the Deantoni and Hanna and Kaytlin in the States is just, well, at this time not possible, but I think it's cool how we learned to also have a creative process over Zoom or over internet. Yes, there's a lot of possibilities.
So you mentioned Hanna and Kaytlin. Can you explain a little bit more about all of the different composers involved in this project and how the project is organized?
Yeah, so we actually have 2 percussionists, or actually 3, including myself then. So Deantoni and also Binkbeats. Binkbeats is a multi-instrumentalist, but also writes new music for the 2 of us to perform. He is also a Dutch artist, so he is actually someone I can physically collaborate with, which is really cool. I think he's more in the techno, darker style, which is super nice to have as a contrast. And on the other side, we have the new piece by Hanna Benn, which is called Pending. And I asked her if she could also use her voice samples in there. So I'm triggering the voice samples actually with MIDI controllers, and you will hear her voice also in the performance. So that's also reflecting to the time that we had these 2 years and not being able to be physically there, but still having the emotional quality of someone's voice present in a performance. So that's what we were working on, and I think that's a very lyrical piece with still some rhythm in there where a contemporary dancer made a choreography on. And then the other piece is by Kaytlin Aurelia Smith, which she's a lot involved working with modular synths. And what was really cool when I first heard the piece, you hear the modular synths and the vibraphone, which I have right here. And it's almost unaudible which one is the vibraphone, which one is the modular synths, because it's so cool how she molded those sounds together. So it's all, so for me it's quite technically, technologically wise, it's quite advanced. But it's a joy to go into a whole this music scene also.
So are each of the sort of compositions a separate movement that come together to form this entire piece, or what's the structure? What's the overlying structure of the piece?
Yeah, so it's a modular performance. So we actually adapt to the day, to the space, to the people, to everything. And there we made with the director Peter Lee Young and the visual artist Noor Ali. We made a structure of 3 modules. The first module is unconnectivity, so mostly people performing solo. The second is connectivity, where people start to connect, and that's also guided by the visuals. And that's also where, for example, the visual will project something as if it's an outside influence and will influence the dancer and the musician, or 2 musicians or 2 dancers in an improvisation. And that all leads to the third module, which is about collectivity, where everything comes together and styles start to blur and dance styles start to blur, and where the space also opens up basically.
So Deantoni, how did you sort of send your material to Dominique, and what was that collaborative process like?
A lot of second guessing. No. It's, what Dominique does, what I like about what he does is exactly extending outside of, perceptive boundaries, being something that you actually are not being recognized for. Or sometimes for artists, it's hard to kind of step outside of these boundaries that are there, to protect us, basically, which is great. But I like that he, coming from a percussionist background, is extended beyond that in a lot of ways. That's inspiring to me. His rhythm is kind of the key to so many different things, whether it's editing, melody. It's the gateway to so many different things. It's the ultimate, So I love that, and I sent so many things because I have more things actually, Dominique, that So we'll have to continue this in a certain way, but it's just there's so much. But just sending a lot of files and having a little bit of practice with writing in isolation and having to be tech savvy, tool savvy, has really helped out a lot because we're still trying to with. Anytime that we do a Zoom or like that first time we talked, Dominique, I just held so much information just from that interaction. So, like literally taking that as a kind of, fission reactor for for energy for me to push the things that I sent to you. So it's, despite us being far away, you still understand that our feelings are real, and they travel much further than networks can carry them, right? So that's kind of the feeling. And the first piece I sent you was very moody in this way, and because we've all been very introspective, and I had to send more things where it's like, okay, let me get more into my like super percussive, violent side, I guess. So I sent you some of those things later, but just trying to capture all of the emotion, I guess, is the hardest thing. So. Sorry if it was confusing sending you everything.
No.
But I know you understand.
Yeah, and this process is nice of being able to freely send something out without having to judge it immediately, but being able to play around with it and to see where is this going. And in a way, that's also cool, because what I asked Deantoni was also to work in a kind of like to work similar as the concept in a modular way. So I could have like musical building blocks and sounds, and then work with those sounds in an improvisation with the dancers. So
Awesome.
I guess that's also it's really cool, but it's also a very hard question to a composer. Like, hey, can you make something which we don't know yet where it's for? Like because it's about like that moment that you need to have a language to be able to react on what a visual does or what a dancer does, and that means that you need to have enough language to be able to speak on that moment.
Something that I found very interesting about the way that we've all been forced to collaborate during the pandemic is that usually when you're working on a collaboration and you have two people in the same room, you're constantly vibing off each other. You're constantly getting subtle signals from the other person about what they like, what they don't like, what you think they might like, whatever. And so that's sort of like a almost an extroverted form of creativity. And right now, because we all have to make stuff in our own houses by ourselves, we're accessing this really introverted form of creativity where you're alone, you're in your own brain, you're making your own stuff. And then that stuff gets projected out and shared with other people, which I'm not saying that didn't happen prior to the pandemic, but I've been finding that it's a more specific way of collaborating that we've all been engaging in than necessarily had happened prior. So I like all of these pretty personal things that have come out of this way to collaborate. And I think
true.
I think that we're very lucky to be able to see an example, Dominique, of your collaboration with Deantoni right now, if you're willing to show us what you've been up to.
Yeah, sure. So this is something is still work in progress. Like I had a ton of music coming out, and this is like one musical. So let me explain. So it's basically a musical pattern with sounds, and then it has to react on what the dancer and what the visuals do. So basically in my studio, I'm just every time trying to work with it, change it, do it again. So every time is already different in my studio. So it will be now also again different.
I love it. So we're going to see a live quasi-written, quasi-improvised preview of this type of work right now, performed by Dominique. And whenever you're ready. Yay. Awesome. So cool to hear that.
Welcome. You're still hearing our weird sounds, probably. Yeah.
Beautiful, Dominique.
Thank you.
Well, I really cannot wait to see how this all comes together. And I just want to thank both of you, Deantoni and Dominique, for being our guests on the show today. You can learn more about this project and the whole Birds of Paradise Festival at birds-of-paradise.nl, where you can explore the lineup and also these 3D artist rooms where you probably found this video. And where you can also find another episode of Living Music Birds of Paradise Edition. That one features Caroline Shaw and David Lang. A New Dawn for New Tomorrows is the final performance of the Birds of Paradise Festival, which will take place on March 13th at 8:30 p.m. And Deantoni and Dominique, we have a little tradition on Living Music of doing a toast at the end of our shows. We are spanning so many time zones between the Netherlands and Los Angeles and the Midwest that I don't think we're all in the mood to have an alcoholic beverage right now, but let's just do a cheers with whatever we have on hand. So awesome to see you. Cheers. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dominique.
Thanks, Deantoni.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy the festival. Goodbye.